GM thought they were going to be striking the big Spring Hill, Tennessee plant. So they loaded up a bunch of engines that on trucks to transport them out to the Wentzville, Missouri plant. Well, as it turns out, they sent him to the plant that he was calling out on strike. So halfway there, they're calling the truck drivers to turn around, and the truck driver said, "No, we've got our destination in our paperwork. We're going there."
Welcome to Fight Back Radio, a production of fightbacknews.org, taking you to the heart of the people's struggle. I'm your host, Richard Berg, and I want to welcome everybody today to our 50th episode. It's hard to believe we've been doing it this long, and we haven't missed a release date yet. We've been releasing every 2 weeks on a Sunday for just about 2 years now. So we're going to be talking about the United Auto Workers, and we're talking. Our guest is Scott Houldieson, who's the chair of Unite All Workers for Democracy. Unite All Workers for Democracy, which is the caucus in the United Auto Workers that recently took power and turned things around. It's this year there's been this last year there's been a real, in the Teamsters and in the auto workers, a real revival of class struggle unionism, of people willing to fight, stand up and fight back. And we saw it at the United Parcel Service contract campaign, and we see it again at with the strike against the big three in auto. And so I think you'll enjoy this show, and I think you'll get something out of it. Scott is, like I said, he's the chair of the steering committee for this caucus and UAWD, and but he's a worker for almost 35 years. He's worked at the assembly plant on the south side of Chicago, the Ford Torrance plant, just outside the city. So Scott's been with the UAW for quite a while now. He started in the trim department at Ford Chicago assembly plant in 1989 and became an electrician apprentice in 1994. Scott has served Local 551 as the vice president, the financial secretary, and an alternate committee person for skilled trades. He was the editor of the local union newspaper, also serving on various committees of Local 551, including the Member-to-Member Committee, the Union Solidarity Committee, the Skilled Trades Committee, and the Constitution and Bylaws Committee. Scott was elected a delegate to the UAW Constitutional Conventions in 2010, 2014, 2018, and 2022. And he prides himself on speaking truth to power. And you'll hear that in this interview. Scott's been, he's well versed on union democracy. He's well versed on what's the history of the UAW. And he puts that all to good use to build a fighting labor movement and a fighting UAW, and was very active in the most recent strike. He's been active in national politics of the UAW as well. So without any more, here's Scott Houldieson from UAWD. So welcome to Fight Back Radio, Scott.
Thanks for having me, Rich.
Yeah, it's good to have you. And you're the chair of the Unite All Workers for Democracy, UAWD. But you're a worker. You work at the Ford Torrance plant just outside of Chicago, where they make Ford cars. Could you tell us a little bit about how you came to work at Ford, and your a little bit of your history in the UAW and Local 551?
Sure. Well, I've been working at the Ford Chicago assembly plant for almost 35 years now. My father was a worker at the Ford Chicago stamping plant in Chicago Heights. He worked there for 36 years. So we're kind of on the same track. But anyway, so it was kind of a family thing, where, a lot of auto workers, pass on the tradition from family to family. My daughters are auto workers now at the assembly plant. So we're a 3-generation UAW family.
Okay, so yeah, I want to get into the right away to the discussion about UAWD, or Unite All Workers for Democracy. This is a reform caucus within the United Auto Workers. And could you explain a little bit about how this came about? I think it was like 2019 and around that time. And so what were the conditions that led to people deciding to do this? And what is UAWD exactly?
Well, UAWD is a caucus within the UAW, and we come from the UAW has a rich history of caucuses in the union, fighting for against concessions and for racial justice and things like that. In the 1960s, you had the Dodge Revolutionary Union movement, and later on you had caucuses like the National United Caucus and Locals Against Concessions, and then in the 1980s, New Directions had some successes, but our caucus came about kind of on the heels of a massive corruption scandal in our union. In 2017, we started hearing about the vice presidents from the international UAW vice presidents that were over the Chrysler department had been taking bribes from the top executives in Chrysler that they were negotiating with so that they could get better contract terms for the company and better enforcement from the company's point of view during the term of those contracts. And over the course of from 2017 through the end of 2019, there were about a dozen UAW officials, including some very high up, union executive board members, including 2 presidents of our union that were caught up in this corruption scandal. And it covered everything from taking bribes from the company to soliciting kickbacks from vendors to downright embezzlement of union funds. UAW members were getting very frustrated with the course of how our union was being handled before that ever happened. In 2007, we had some horrendous concessions. That's when they started the 2-tier wage and benefit system. And that's when I kind of really got, fired up about trying to figure out how to claw back those concessions and turn our union around into the kind of union that it once was. Our union was a very militant union in its founding years. And, we were hoping to get some of that fight back in our union and start to take on the companies rather than, be cooperating with the companies. Being a company union, basically, is what we had turned into.
I want to circle back to that, but let me ask you this. So a caucus, then, just, for people that don't have this kind of history, is like a kind of like a political party for union elections. So you run one side or the other a little bit. And in the UAW, what they call the administrative caucus has been in charge forever, I think, for a long time. And so despite, I know some of these caucuses you mentioned, Drum, the Dodge Revolutionary Union movement, and New Directions, and some others. But they ultimately weren't successful at overturning the leadership of the union. And but despite that, you decided, okay, we want to go into this. we're going to try to do this. What was your strategy? I mean, obviously the administrative caucus had been hurt by the corruption. I'm thinking around that time, John Deere and some others were going out on strike, so there was dissatisfaction around other things. You mentioned, 2 tiers in auto. So what was your strategy for trying to overturn the leadership of your union and to have an election?
Well, the strategy, you mentioned the administration caucus has been around for a long time. Walter Reuther formed that caucus in 1946, I think, and that was when he won the presidency of the union. And in the next convention in 1947, he consolidated power and never looked back. That caucus controlled every international executive board seat except for maybe 2 over the course of the next, until last year, until 2023. We were looking at an uphill battle, but we were also looking at some examples in other unions, like in the Teamsters. So the Teamsters had gone through something very similar in the 80s, and the Teamsters, for a democratic union, had been around since the 70s, but when the federal government stepped in to try and push the mob out of the Teamsters union, they got direct elections for their international officers. And we thought that if we could get direct elections for our international officers, that it could be a game changer for union, having union democracy would be a game changer for us. The convention system had, the administration caucus would use their control over the appointments. So they would hold this carrot and stick out. They would hold the carrot of appointments out for delegates that were usually union leadership in local unions. And they'd also hold out the stick of, hey, when we go into contract negotiations, you really might want to be on our good side to be able to get product commitments from these companies. Because over the past 20 years, there have been 65 big 3 plants that have closed. So that was a way for the union to hold their power. They were getting a lot of their power from the company. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think it does. But let me ask you this. I mean, our Fight Back Radio listeners will know I was with the Teamsters for over 20 years, so I was part of a lot of what you're talking about. I'm very familiar with this, and but I know when so getting the rank and file right to vote is huge, because you're right. I mean, whether it's controlling contract negotiations or in the Teamsters grievance panels were a big thing. There's different ways that the people in power can maintain their power, and people want to be loyal to them at the convention to get other things in their local or their region or whatever. But once you got the rank and file, well, let me go back to that. How did you get the right to vote? It's not like, I mean, the Teamsters, it was a consent decree with the government that allowed a rank and file right to vote. But even then it was difficult. But how did you get the right to vote? And a lot of this was happening during COVID times too, if I'm right. So did that mess up your abilities, or how did that affect your fight to get the right to vote?
So it's funny that you asked that question, because we were organizing to use our UAW Constitution to get the right to vote. We were also using our UAW Constitution to file charges against the officers that were involved in the corruption scandals. So a group of us got together and were studying the Constitution and trying to figure out ways to take our union back. And one of those ways we thought was to call a special convention from the membership. Our Constitution has a way for the membership to call a special convention, and the process is that you get local unions to pass a resolution to call for a special convention. But in that resolution, you have to give the purpose, the date, what city you want to have it in, all kinds of details about what you want to do. And we wanted to have the right to directly elect our international officers. So that's what the special convention resolution was all about. But our Constitution said that once you get at least 15 locals in 5 different states representing 20% of the membership to pass this resolution, then they call a referendum vote of the entire membership to decide whether to actually call the convention. So, we were working towards that, from late 2019 right up into COVID. And at the time that COVID hit, we had 26 local unions in 15 different states, but it was only about 10% of the membership. So we were far short in the total number of members that we had to get under this resolution, and then COVID hit and shut down all the union meetings. So that was the end of that. So the next thing you know, the federal government is working towards filing a racketeering suit against our union. And so in that effort, the union had agreed to a consent decree, much like the Teamsters had, back in the 80s. And but in this consent decree, which was a little different from the Teamsters, we were awarded the right to have a referendum vote to decide that question, whether to have continue with the convention system of electing our international officers or switch to a one member, one vote direct election system. And the Teamsters, when they got it, they just said, yeah, you're going to have direct elections. But, we had this referendum hurdle to overcome first. And, we were pretty disappointed that we didn't just get it handed to us. But looking back, I say that was a gift to have that referendum, because that referendum allowed us to organize a large number of UAW members behind the idea of directly electing our international officers. And we got that right on the heels of this corruption scandal. So we ended up winning that referendum by a 2-to-1 margin.
Wow. Well, congratulations. And it made all the difference.
Oh, it sure did.
Well, let me ask you, though, then, in campaigning for the referendum, and even afterwards, when you ran a slate of candidates, the UAW is it has auto workers, as its name implies, but also it has people in farm implements like John Deere I mentioned, and Caterpillar workers. But then you have people that work at universities and public defense. You got lots of different types of people that folks don't think about always when they think about the United Auto Workers. Were the issues the same in these different types of people, or did you have to adjust how you were campaigning, or did you have were there places where you just couldn't make breakthroughs, or how did the campaign actually look?
Well, we first of all, it was kind of hard finding candidates, because after 75 years of administration caucus rule, people were a little leery about stepping up to run for these positions against the powers that be. But we managed to get 7 candidates that we got nominated. We nominated them at the 2022 Constitutional Convention, and then we used our list that we had gotten through the one member, one vote organizing to start reaching out to UAW members across the country. but that list was still limited in scope as compared to the whole UAW. And workers in academia, state of Michigan workers, casino workers, they all have different issues, but all of them are basically, fighting the boss for a fair living. So, we all had that in common. And, the two-tier wage structure that had seeped into several different sectors of our union. So there was a lot that, we found out that we had more in common than we really had differences. So the referendum, like I said, allowed us to get a head start on the campaign. But we really did several different approaches to the campaign. We had leaflets at the plant gates where we had members that were willing to go out and pass out leaflets to their coworkers. And then the candidates did some tours where they would go around and meet people from, we'd have meetings with people from different plants, and then they would go back to their plants and pass out flyers. We also raised some funds, enough funds to be able to send out a partial mailing. I think we mailed to like 20% of the membership, that might not have been that high, maybe 10 or 15% of the membership. But that got everybody's name out to all the members. To every local pretty much. And we also ran some Facebook ads using our social media influence. And, the candidates got on social media and did some Facebook Lives, and President Fain ended up using those to great effect during the stand-up strike.
So let me ask you though. So what were the issues? Why were people voting for UAW? I mean, actually, the name of the slate was. Tell me what was the name of the slate?
It was UAW Members United, and
Members United. Okay.
Yeah, the campaign line was no concessions, no corruption, no tears. So we were turning the page on the corruption that had been plaguing our union for since 2017 at least, and we were turning the page on the cooperation scheme that the UAW had been engaged in with management since the 1980s. Through joint programs, they had become closer to the company than they were to their own membership. And then the no tiers, the tiered wage and benefit structure had seeped its way into just about every aspect of working life in the union. From independent parts to adjunct professors to the agricultural implement sector. Everybody was suffering under this tiered wage and benefit scheme that had been introduced into our contracts. And that came about as part of the cooperation that the union had with the companies.
Yeah, it seems to me. Tell me if I'm wrong here, but it's you guys are going back to what the UAW used to be, in its founding, like the days of the Congress of Industrial Organizations, the CIO, which UAW was one of the main unions that started that federation. And there was even the stand-up strike is for people that aren't familiar with labor history, is a reference to the sit-down strikes that were going on in the 1930s in Flint, Michigan, and Toledo, Ohio, and other places. But the founding of the UAW was based on a class struggle. And really fighting the boss and fighting for these things. And over the years, it seems that there was a whittling away of that. There was you had McCarthyism, where a lot of the militants were, whether they were communist or not, were kicked out of the Union. And I remember when I was young, Douglas Frazier and some of these guys, who's former UAW president, got on the board with Chrysler, or was trying to. I think he did. And
He did.
there was and there's this whole thing of class collaboration, which is different, and let's we be partnership and let's work together, and that took all the fight out of the union, and eventually it seeped into corruption. It sounds like. So it seems like what UAWD and the new president Sean Fain are trying to go back to this and say, look, we don't. We have different interests than the boss, and we're going to fight for our interests. Am I right about that? Does that sound about right? Or
Oh, definitely. And President Fain has been unapologetic about framing the issues as working class issues, and standing up to the billionaire class and the Wall Street barons. It's the same thing that we went through in the 30s during the Depression, when the union was founded. Uh, During the sit-down strike, we were fortunate enough to have um, uh, friendly government at the time. We had FDR in the White House, and Governor Frank Murphy was just recently elected to be the governor of Michigan. And when the Flint police attacked the sit-down strikers and tried to forcibly remove them from the plant, they fought back and fought them off. But that was going to continue. That kind of violence was going to continue to be perpetrated against the strikers if Governor Murphy hadn't have sent in the National Guard to get in between uh, and allow the space needed to have negotiations between GM and the UAW take place. In labor history, 99 times out of 100, when they send in the National Guard, it's to break the strike. But this time, it was to stand between the city police and the strikers, to allow for contract negotiations to take place under the New Deal regime of the National Labor Relations Act.
so let's flip forward then. So you're grabbing, so you success. You took over the presidency of the United Auto Workers. Sean Fain is the new president. And we had, John Melrod on here a while back, who wrote a book about UAW. I knew him when he was in Wisconsin at that time. And
I recently read his book. Very good book.
okay, let's give a recommendation to John Melrod's book. So, but there were what he said on here was that he was concerned because Sean Fain had just been elected at that time. It was before the stand-up strike, and he said, "Look, the administrative caucus is still in place, and you elected some people, but most of the old guys are still there." And I don't know what it was like backstage, but from where I was sitting, it looked like the strike was strong and effective. I mean, I'm sure there's always issues going on, in a strike, but it was impressive. And President Fain came out with militant talk, and he backed it up with calling for militant actions. Can you talk a little bit about how basically going back and said let's have class struggle, let's stand up for the working class, and it worked. It seemed to me. I mean, I don't know if you want to comment on how I was surprised at how it looked like it was seamless. I mean, obviously there was a lot of sacrifice by many people over a long strike, but could you talk a little bit about the stand-up strike and how that actually went?
Sure. Well, to talk about the stand-up strike, you kind of have to talk about President Fain getting sworn in. And he was sworn in almost exactly a year ago. In fact, 2 days from today, it'll be 1 year that he's been sworn into office. It seems like, there's been a lot that's gone on in that year. And the very next day after he was sworn in, he was chairing a bargaining convention that we have in the year, the auto contract negotiations, that his predecessor had set everything up, had arranged everything, got the speakers for. Most of the delegates were administration caucus delegates. So, he had a rough start there. But he pulled it together quickly. He got a good team behind him. And they started planning a contract campaign. And but as they're planning the contract campaign, they're getting pushback from the administration caucus because they didn't do things this way. So there were negotiations that were going on to try and put together a strategy for a contract campaign before the strike, before contract negotiations even commenced. And that's where UAWD had an opportunity to step in and start working on contract campaigns before the international even got theirs off the ground. And we took a lot of lessons from the Teamsters who were in contract negotiations and a contract campaign with UPS. Their contract expired at the end of July last year, and ours was in September. So we got to see what they were doing with their practice pickets and the parking lot meetings, and we started turning those into 10-minute meetings in break rooms in auto plants across the country, and started doing our own practice pickets and having rallies. And then in July, the negotiations usually kick off with a ceremonial handshake with the executives between the UAW president and the executive for each of the companies. And this year, this time, President Fain said, "No, I'm going to wait to shake your hand until we have a deal that our members are satisfied with." So what he did then was and took all the vice presidents and the secretary treasurer. They went to the plant gates and they shook hands with the membership, and they listened to the membership about what their issues were, and they put out surveys to the membership. This is the first time that kind of stuff has happened. Usually, the members have to come up with their own contract ideas and submit them well in advance of the bargaining convention and contract negotiations and hope that they get on the table. But this time, the leadership was coming right to the plant gates and talking to the members and getting their ideas about what they wanted on the table. And when they did go on the table, that's exactly what President Fain called them, was the members' demands. Instead of the president's demands, which are what was put on the table in past negotiations, this time it was the members' demands. And all our demands were there. Now, we didn't win everything from this stand-up strike, but we won a hell of a lot. And the strategy of the stand-up strike was different than past negotiations. In the past, they would pick one target, whether it be Ford, GM, or Chrysler, or now it's called Stellantis, and they would negotiate with that company, try and get the best deal that they could, and then try and pattern the other two after it. Well, this time, we had been losing on that kind of pattern bargaining for decades under this new cooperation scheme. So President Fain made it clear to the companies that September 14th was a deadline, not a reference point. And he said, if you don't have a contract that we can give to our members, that's good enough to give to our members by the end of the day on September 14th, September 15th, we will be on strike. And he told all three of them that. And it was, people were still guessing, well, which company is going to be the target? Well, they were all the target. And he kept saying that. And then we found out how they planned to do that. We knew our strike fund would be in trouble if we tried to strike all three of them, all of the plants and all three of the companies at once. So the stand-up strike was really it was a genius tactic. They kept the company on their heels guessing. So when the strike deadline passed and President Fain called the first three plants out, the companies were guessing what their strategy was going to be. And they there was reports coming from GM where they had GM thought they were going to be striking the big Spring Hill, Tennessee plant. So they loaded up a bunch of engines that on trucks to transport them out to the Wentzville, Missouri plant, and thinking that they were going to be striking the plant in Tennessee. Well, as it turns out, they sent him to the plant that he was calling out on strike. So halfway there, they're calling the truck drivers to turn around, and the truck driver said, "No, we've got our destination in our paperwork. We're going there." So those engines went to a plant that was on strike, and then they found another driver to take them back to Tennessee. In our plant, there was rumors, strong rumors that we were going to be going out first, and it ended
This is local 551 at the Ford Torrance plant.
Yeah, exactly. The Ford Chicago assembly plant, and the company, as the strike deadline was looming, they started emptying out the paint department because if you leave the cars in the dip tank for the phosphate or the eco dip tank, they get ruined. If you leave them in the paint oven, they get burnt. So they started emptying out the paint department and got it completely emptied out before the strike deadline. And then, lo and behold, we were not on strike. It was the Michigan assembly plant in Wayne, Michigan. And in Stellantis, I'm not sure what kind of preparations they were making, but they called out the Toledo Jeep plant. So, to preserve our strike fund, they called out just certain plants that were kind of strategic and also kept the company on their heels guessing.
So let me ask you though about some of the about your place, about the assembly plant in Chicago. So this is one of the larger Ford plants, I think, in the country. One of the older ones too. I know that. What was the lead up to this, to November 14th, and as the strike, and eventually you were called out? What was the discussions? How did the rank and file relate to the strike? Was there, were people nervous? Probably so. Or what was the atmosphere in the factory at the time?
Well, the atmosphere in the factory was a little nervous, but also it was excitement because in these contract negotiations, they had been so open and so transparent, with President Fain doing his Facebook Live presentations on a weekly basis, telling us what the company was putting on the table and what we had on the table, and kind of describing the banter back and forth, and famously when he was presenting the Stellantis contract, and Stellantis was telling their workers that we're not asking for any concessions this time, and then President Fain went through item by item all the concessions they were asking for, and then said he's going to put this contract where it belongs, and picked up the trash can and threw it in. So members were following along and keeping up with these public pronouncements about what was going on in contract negotiations. And we know what we wanted. We knew what had been taken away from us over the past couple of decades, and we were ready to fight to get that back. The membership was excited; they were ready to go out. And in fact, as each week would pass, and they would call out different plants, there would be a kind of an anger from the plants that still had to stay at work. So the membership was really excited about the possibility of possibly striking to get back what we were owed.
Yeah, and the strike. I forgot how long you were on strike here in Chicago, but if I know there was a rally there where President Fain came, and there was my local union president, Stacey Davis Gates from the teachers union was there, and others, and there was an excitement that day for sure. I mean, there was people were just in the parking lot. There was a buzz after the rally was over that went on for quite a while, and but can you talk a little bit about the actual the strike itself and how it affected you and your coworkers in Local 551?
Well, I think the strike, it was exciting at first, but then after week, it starts to wear on you a little bit. But it also introduced members from one department or a different shift with members from that they'd never met before, right? I mean, there's 5,000 people that work at that plant on 3 different shifts. We have a body shop, we have a paint department, we have a trim department, we have a chassis department, pre-delivery. So all those different departments, people hardly knew one another. You knew the people that were in your general area, but when you got on the picket line, you were on the picket line with your union family that you had never met before in many cases. So what that built was some solidarity among the ranks, and also the rallies. We had plenty of rallies. It wasn't just that one. We had some rallies in the lead up to the strike. We had that big rally, and when dignitaries would come, there'd be a parade to each of the different picket locations. The governor was there. We had delegations from different unions showing solidarity. We had the teachers union out there on several occasions, and my favorite teachers union person, B. Lumpkin, came out there.
Oh yes, yes. B is over out for our Fight Back Radio listeners that don't know. I think she's 105 years old now, and is still an active delegate at 105 of the Chicago Teachers Union. So yes, she's I think she's all our favorites in CTU. So thanks for mentioning B. Let me ask you though. I want to ask you about some of the issues in the strike that were, pivotal in some ways, but unusual too. I mean, there was discussions about, within the auto industry about moving towards electric cars and what what retooling plants and technology has been an issue in the UAW for a long time. I mean, the number of auto workers making cars is far less than it was when you started 30 some years ago because of robots and other kind of technology within the plant. And even I know there's a plant not far from Chicago near Rockford that was a Chrysler plant that was closed, and they're talking about reopening that to make new batteries and other. I'm not sure the whole deal is stuff for cars, but can you talk a little bit about how that played out and the company's resistance to it and how the union responded?
Yeah, the transition to electric vehicles, the companies were barreling ahead with that. full steam. And part of their strategy was to form these joint ventures to make the batteries, and the joint ventures were in part to try to avoid having these battery plants fall under the master agreements for GM and Stellantis. Legally, we could not force them to bargain over a joint venture plan, and that's just how the National Labor Relations Act is framed. Is that these were permissive subjects of bargaining, but they were not mandatory subjects of bargaining when they're a joint venture. And the companies did this purposefully to try and keep the union from out of these plants, or if the union came in, to keep them as parts plants that were at a lower wage scale. And we did get some help from the administration, the Biden administration, to put pressure, and also from Congress. Senators signed letters saying that the companies should put these battery plants under our master agreement. So we used all kinds of tactics to try and get that, and we did get that. We got a limited success with it. We have them under our master agreement, but there's little difference that overflow capacity members can transfer there, and they have card check agreements, so they'll card check into our master agreements, but there's different work rules in them. So it wasn't a 100% win, but it was a big win to get those battery plants under our master agreement. And GM was the first one to capitulate to that, and they've been the Ultium battery plant in Lordstown, Ohio, has been under UAW organization, but now it's under the GM master contract. So that was the future of our industry, and Ford had split their company into two divisions, the blue division, and I think they call the other one the green division, maybe. But anyway, they did that with the aim of having the internal combustion engine plants under the union contracts, and trying to get by without getting the EV plants under the union contract. And we fought back against that, and I think we won a huge concession from the companies with getting those plants under our master agreement.
Let me ask you also. I mean, another way that the industry is tried to go non-union is by moving to right to work states, and some of the whatever the foreign automakers that have come to the United States to build auto plants have built non-union plants in the South, and in the aftermath of the stand-up strike, there's been a real effort, or a renewed effort, to try to organize at I think it's Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, Toyota. Am I right? Maybe you're probably more familiar with this than I am. But it seems that the strike itself gives people that are in a non-union situation a reason to look up and say, "Hey, I want what those guys got. I want to." And even if even if they pay you the same, it's like, I want to have a little dignity and self-respect, which comes with fighting for yourself. Could you talk about that a little bit, about organizing the unorganized?
Yeah, the organizing the unorganized, in the past we would target a plant and, go in there and work on getting that plant, and maybe we'd win, maybe we'd lose. More often than not, we lost. But, coming out of the stand-up strike, we had so much momentum. And, we're calling this Stand Up 2.0, where we're just trying to organize them all at once. And, it's a very ambitious undertaking. And right now, we're having success, a lot of success with it. We're going after, the Volkswagen, Mercedes, Honda, Toyota, Hyundai, Tesla, Rivian, all of them. So right now, Volkswagen workers in Chattanooga, Tennessee, have filed for a union election. They have a supermajority that have signed union cards, and my understanding is that the Volkswagen has agreed to the election. They're not going to fight it, and they're not disputing it that there's enough for a union election. So that union election is going to be taking place before too long. And then Mercedes workers, President Fain was down in Alabama today, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to meet with the Mercedes workers who have gotten over 50% of their workers in that plant have signed union cards, and they're working towards that supermajority there, where they'll file. Toyota plant in Missouri has over 30% where they go public. Same thing with Rivian in Illinois and Champaign. And there's momentum coming out of the stand-up strike that as these transplants start to have these elections, and we win these elections, you're going to see more momentum building. And then out of the stand-up strike, there was what we call the UAW bump, where to try and prevent the union from coming in, the companies were giving their workers pay raises. There'd be an 11% at this plant, or they'd Honda would promise their workers that they're going to raise their wages 9%, or and we called that the UAW bump, because they could have gone and given those raises to those workers a year ago, but they chose right after we won our contract gains to give their workers wage increases to try and head off the steamroller that's coming their way.
So, I mean, it sounds like just, in 1 year, just a fabulous success across the board, and the momentum seems to continue. Can you talk a little bit about, outside of the auto industry for UAW workers, farm implements, or higher ed or public sector people in Michigan or other places as well that are members of the United Auto Workers? And what does this vision that President Fain and UAWD have? How does that look in those places? What are the next steps there?
Well, it's union democracy, and that's our vision, right? Also social justice unionism, and that especially plays well in the higher ed and legal services sector of our union. And union democracy, everyone wants the right to vote, and they want the transparency in union negotiations. They don't want to be kept in the dark while negotiators are behind closed doors with the company doing who knows what, right? They want those updates. They want to know what's going on, and by presenting that transparency, we're getting more success in those areas too, right now, Daimler Trucks, and Thomas Built Buses, they're all under the same master agreement. They're in contract negotiations right now in North Carolina, and they have a contract deadline of April 26th, I believe. So they're doing their contract campaign right now, and they're excited about the possibilities and looking to get some concessions that they've given up in the past back. So there's momentum out of it. The higher ed locals have been they've been organizing new locals and new units for a while now. That's been the fastest growing segment of our union for a while, and it's continuing its growth.
So you're looking to have a convention, I believe, in September. Am I right, in Michigan? What is your hope? What are you going to try to accomplish for this UAWD? So for auto workers that are listening, I'd encourage you to join UAWD and to come to this convention. I'm sure Scott will as well in a minute here. But could you tell us a little bit, give a teaser why people should join UAWD if they're UAW members, and why they should come to Michigan for this convention? Maybe you can give the time and place of it as well, and we can put in the show notes how for people can sign up for it and such like that.
Yeah, well, you should join UAWD because we are putting the democracy in the UAW, and we have won some some seats at the top of the union, but we still have a lot of work to do at the local level of the union. Local negotiations are still done in secret behind closed doors. We need to open that up and bring transparency down to the local level of the unions as well. So that's why you should be a part of this caucus, be a part of this movement for democracy in our union. And this fall we're going to have our first ever UAWD convention, and at the convention, President Fain is going to be the keynote speaker there, and we're going to have classes on different aspects of the union, from grievance handling to organizing and learning about how the UAW works, from the inside. And we're going to have all kinds of these classes and workshops. And we're also going to have our annual national meeting for UAWD, where we elect half of our steering committee every year. So, yeah, it's going to be a big deal. It's going to be September 20. Now I got to try and remember because I didn't write it down in front of me. But I believe it's September 27th, 28th, and 29th. And it's going to be at the Southfield in Southfield, Michigan. And you can find out more about it on uawd.org. That's our website. And we're also on Facebook, Unite All Workers for Democracy on Facebook.
Okay, so and we'll put those things in the show notes too, so people can find them. Unfortunately, this time went quickly. We're running out of time here. I want to give you the opportunity, if there's anything we didn't cover here that you'd like to say about UAWD or about the United Auto Workers or just labor in general. Now would be a good time to do that.
Well, during the election, we ran 7 candidates for International Executive Board. There are 14 International Executive Board members, so we only contested half of the seats, and we did sweep those elections. All 7 of our candidates were elected. Not only was Shawn Fain elected president, but Margaret Mock was elected secretary treasurer. Mike Booth is the vice president over the GM department. Rich Boyer is the vice president over Stellantis. Regional directors, LaShawn English in Region 1, Dan Vincente in Region 9, and Brandon Mancia in Region 9A. So, we were successful in our endeavor, but we need to continue working to reform our union, because we're not done. We have to get down to the local level and get more local leaders that are committed to the idea of transparency and democracy in our union.
Okay, well, that's a good way. That's a good way to end it, I think. Thank you so much for being our guest on Fight Back Radio, Scott. This was very informative to me, and I'm sure to our listeners.
It was a pleasure to be on here, and thank you for inviting me, Richard.
Well, thank you, Scott Houldieson from United Auto Workers UAWD, for being our guest on our 50th episode. And I hope people enjoyed that. I think it was gives us some background. It has been a good year for labor in standing up and fighting back again. I mentioned the Teamsters as well, and other places as well. I mean, I gave a shout out recently to my sisters and brothers at the Instituto del Progreso Latino from the Chicago Teachers Union that went on strike there. The only union and the only group to strike the same charter school twice. But there's more of this happening, and people are standing up and recognizing this, and it's a good thing. Hopefully, Fight Back Radio has been a part of that for you. We've been 50 episodes without missing one, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of our production team who's made this all happen over and over again. We're a volunteer operation of people who are working, and students and whatever, and to make this all happen has been a team effort, and I want to thank our production team for doing that, and also want to thank all our listeners. We've had I think we're approaching 60,000 listens over the last almost 2 years. So, but let us know how we can make it better. We're continually trying to improve. You can send us an email at richard.fightbackradio@gmail.com. And you can find us, on Facebook or Twitter or, whatever, all the different Instagram, all the different places. And, get the word out. Tell people to listen to Scott Houldieson if they want to learn about the United Auto Workers, or tell them to go back and listen to some of the other episodes that you may have found interesting as well. But with that, I want to thank our entire production team, Dodd McColgan, Natalie Pranis, Vince Olson, and Shane Tremley. And I'm Richard Berg for the entire Fight Back Radio team, saying until next time, all power to the people.